defenses are not. He's going to be deceptively fast and quick to them. They're not going to know how to cover someone that is this fluid, that has this type of wingspan, that fights for the ball the way that he does. I think he's a true number one wide receiver with Hall of Fame potential, and I think getting that at number 4 is great.
Brandon, your thoughts?
I liked it. He's my number 2 player on my board, and I think it's just really hard to miss. I mean, his production is, you just can't argue with it. I'm a little on the lines of Stuber over there, though. Who's going to throw him the ball? If the Bengals have a plan to get a quarterback right at the top of the second round, and they truly trust that, maybe a Ponder or a Locker or something is going to fall out of the first and be available right there at the top of the second, I think it's a can't miss. If they don't have plans to get a quarterback, I think that they're going to be in trouble because, everything I've read and everything that people have said, I think Carson Palmer is out of there one way or another. So I hope they have a contingency plan for the second round if that's the pick.
Well, and next up we have what I think could be the linchpin pick, certainly of the top 10. So, Stuber, there's a lot of pressure on you with the Arizona Cardinals.
I'll tell you what, if I'm the Cardinals, I'm entertaining phone calls right now. I'm looking for a team to trade back with because they're in a prime spot right here. I mean, there's a quarterback on the board. There is 2 fantastic cornerbacks. You got a good pass rusher and Robert Quinn. So many different ways they can go here. And the Cardinals, you look at them last year with the quarterback merry-go-round they had, starting 3 rookie quarterbacks last year, and you just don't really know the future of any of these guys. John Skelton showed some flashes, but you bring in another young quarterback, you test those waters again. I mean, you know what? This is the toughest pick I have to believe, and I'm struggling right now because I'm doing my mock draft as we're doing this show, and I'm going through this thing, and you know what? I have a feeling if Blaine Gabbert drops number 5, it's either going to be the Cardinals that take him or maybe even the Washington Redskins that trade up to get him or one of the teams, even the Tennessee Titans. So I'm going to say Blaine Gabbert here just because teams need quarterbacks. On a lot of teams' boards, he's probably the second guy other than the Tennessee Titans who value Andy Dalton more than anyone else probably. I'm going to say Blaine Gabbert here just because he's a quarterback and teams need him.
Well, and I would certainly agree with that pick. If I were running the Arizona Cardinals, that's exactly what I do. In fact, I'd be thanking my lucky stars that Gabbert was there. If they think they're going to be able to find a great quarterback in the free market, and the guy they've been linked to is Mark Bulger. If you go with Mark Bulger, he might not be as bad as Derek Anderson, but it's not that much of an improvement. I mean, Mark Bulger has seen much better days, and they saw what happened with that drop-off in quarterback play. They went from a Super Bowl contender to a doormat in a bad division just with the loss of Kurt Warner, essentially. So I just think that would be a huge mistake on their part to pass on Gabbert if he's there. Is Gabbert a sure thing? No. Is he going to require some development? Absolutely. But I would much rather have Gabbert than a Mark Bulger. And sure, maybe they can target a quarterback in the second or third round, but boy, we've referenced it a bunch of times in the past. Go to draftcountdown.com, look at the article I wrote on the success rate of quarterbacks selected in the second and third round. It is abysmal. Everyone talks about the bust rate and how risky it is to take a quarterback in the first round. Well, it's basically almost in that 50-50 range. In the second and third round, you're talking single digits. That's in terms of percentages. The vast majority of quarterbacks taken in the second and third round do not pan out. So if the Cardinals, considering their awful quarterback situation, if they were to pass on Gabbert, I think it would be a huge mistake. Although, there have been indications that they're not real high on him and that they're willing to go another direction. Although, hopefully for the sake of Cardinals fans, that's just the organization playing the NFL draft game and blowing smoke because I think it would be a huge mistake to pass on Gabbert. Shane?
I don't know if they're going to take him here either, and I think, as Chris alluded to, maybe this is a prime position for them to trade down. If a team like Washington wants to move up, if a team like Minnesota wants to move up, then they'll probably take a little bit less value for this top 5 pick and do that. I think they're going to take the risk and go the free agency route and maybe get a mid to late round quarterback just in case, or grab someone around 3, but they'll take a shot at hopefully getting Cobb or Mark Bulger or Donovan McNabb and kind of keeping their fingers crossed because that's going to have to happen at some point if there's a season there's going to be some type of free agency period. So I think they may just take their shot at that instead of taking a quarterback here. And so if they don't trade down, I think they would go with Patrick Peterson with what's come up on the board.
Brandon, what do you think about the Cardinals?
You know, I think probably Gabbert's the right pick. I'm a little concerned about, you know, his touchdown to interception ratio from last year. It's a little less than acceptable, and in my opinion, you know, the offense of Missouri isn't one that's real pro-friendly, pro-similar. So I'm not sure how he's going to pick up a pro system, but ultimately I think that they have to do something there, and you know, just like the situation with the Bengals, unless they're 100% sure they can grab someone right at the top of the next round, they have to do something. So this is the pick that I would make. I think that it makes the most sense for the Cardinals.
Well, I think Arizona's dream scenario would be to have Von Miller sitting there because they definitely need a pass rusher. He'd be a great fit in the 3-4, but I don't think they're going to be so lucky. Next up, we got Shane with the Cleveland Browns at number 6. What do you think, Shane? Where are they going?
Well, you know, this is kind of a tough choice. I mean, we see Marcel Darius is off the board, A.J. Green's off the board, who I think if he was here, the Browns would go for him. Do they look to take Julio Jones, maybe reach a little bit for the second wideout? Honestly, I think Tom Heckert, the new GM there, is going to look at the board, look at kind of who's the best player here, who's going to give us an instant impact player despite the position, and I think he's going to go with who may be the top player on his board. I think Patrick Peterson is either number 1 or number 2 on the Browns draft board, and despite taking Joe Hayden high in the first round last year, I think they'll pull the trigger and go with Patrick Peterson right here at 6 if the board falls this way.
Well, and there have been indications that the Browns might go Patrick Peterson if he is there, and that would certainly be the best player available approach. Although, I mean, I've said it before, if they do take Patrick Peterson, they better hope he and Hayden can cover for a long time because opposing quarterbacks are going to have all day to throw because that defensive line is in shambles. I don't know that they have a single starting caliber defensive lineman, so they need at least 3, if not 4, new starters on that defensive front. But I mean, Patrick Peterson is a talent, and I just wonder if the Browns aren't spreading that interest to try and entice a team like maybe the Houston Texans or the Dallas Cowboys to come up for Patrick Peterson. I think they realize that if he's there at 6, he's a guy that a lot of teams are going to covet, and there will be a market for the pick. And the Browns, I think, realize they can move down to number 9 or number 11 and still get a really good pass rusher, whether it be at defensive end or defensive tackle. In fact, if they wanted a guy like Robert Quinn, I think he'll be there at 9 or 11 for them. I don't know that there's necessarily a fit for him after that. So if they want a pass rusher, I certainly would have no problem with them moving down. As much as I like Patrick Peterson, though, I'd be a little skeptical if they took him there at number 6. I just think it's putting too many of your eggs in one basket when they have so many other needs. Stuber, what do you think?
I love the pick. I'm a big proponent of the Browns taking Patrick Peterson. I think he is, to me, on my board at least, the number 2 guy overall. And if you remember Tom Heckert, when he was with the Philadelphia Eagles, his first draft, he drafted Lito Shepard in the first round, then he got Michael Lewis and Sheldon Brown in the second round. And last year, if you remember, they drafted Joe Hayden in the first round, and he got T.J. Ward in the second round. So Tom Heckert loves to go secondary first. He loves to build his secondary. He loves to go defensive line. And you're right, Scott, they do need to build on that defensive line. There's no question about it. But when you can pair Joe Hayden and Patrick Peterson together, and I don't get this whole safety talk with Patrick Peterson just because he's 219 pounds. The kid is fluid. He runs a 4.31. He has the size. He's an excellent return man, although in the NFL it may not even matter anymore. But what he can bring to that field, what he can bring to that team in that secondary, you lock up him, and you have him and Joe Hayden being cornerstones of that defense for the next, hopefully, 5, 7, maybe 10 years, that's legit. And I think they have to pull the trigger on this. And although I do agree with you, Scott, they are also sitting pretty if they want to trade down with a team like Dallas or Houston who may want to trade up to get him. But if they pull the trigger on him and they bring him into the fold, that's one hell of a pick. I would go Patrick Peterson, too.
Brandon, your thoughts?
Well, we are to the number one player on my board, and I don't know how they could pass on him. Shane threw me a curveball because I was praying that Peterson dropped to the Niners. I think that that's their ultimate scenario there. But he's such a great athlete. It's amazing. The combination of size and speed, and like Stuber was saying, so fluid. You rarely see a guy that size that moves as well as he does. And it's a can't miss pick, and I would wager a guess and go out on a limb and say it's a can't miss pick for anyone that takes him. I think he probably is the most sure player in the draft.
Well, just to throw it out there too, there's trade rumors out there that the Browns are maybe going to offer the Minnesota Vikings the 37th pick, which is the 5th pick in the second round of this draft, and their first rounder next year for the 12th pick. The Browns, I mean, if they did that, they'd come away with the two of the best players in this draft. And the reason I give it some credence is one, it matches up on the value chart, and two, Peter King basically mentioned that there was a deal out there similar to what these terms that are rumored, and he didn't mention any teams, but it's kind of been reported by multiple sources that could be a potential trade to watch out for. And then obviously Minnesota would have 2 early second-round picks, and it would give them some flexibility to move around or even wait and hope the quarterback falls into their laps there. So just something interesting to watch out for Cleveland, and that would be something if they came out of this draft with Patrick Peterson and Robert Quinn, or Patrick Peterson, one of those other pass rushers. They'd be paying a big price to do it, but it would be a pretty bold move on their part. So let's move on to San Francisco 49ers, number 7. Brandon, you will be making the pick, and like you said, their hopes were dashed with Peterson coming off the board 1 pick ahead of them. So what's Plan B?
I think Plan B has to be Cam Jordan. I think he fits in well there. I really took a long, hard look at Prince, and I think the probably Prince fits in well, fills their needs. But if you look at the ability of Cam Jordan, his ability to fit in with pretty much any system, I think he'll probably bolster that line a good deal. They have some needs there on the front of that defense, and I think Cam Jordan fits in quite well there.
Well, that's probably the first big curveball of our draft here. I think a lot of people probably would have went Robert Quinn maybe as a stand-up pass rushing outside linebacker, but I mean I'm a big Cam Jordan fan, so I wouldn't trash the pick too much by any means. Maybe a little bit of a reach, and personally I prefer Quinn. I think he has a little more impact potential. But Stuber, what do you think about Cameron Jordan to the Niners there?
Personally, I do think it's a little bit too high for Cam Jordan. I know he's a rising prospect right now. I know a lot of teams do like him. Personally, for me, I would probably go Prince Amukamara here. I love his leadership qualities. I think he's a stand-up guy, spiritual guy. The kind of guy that I could see Jim Harbaugh starting out his tenure there with in San Francisco. It's going to be interesting to see what Jim Harbaugh does. He does need a quarterback out there in San Francisco. He does come from a pro-style type of scheme. He does love those smart guys. I'm just going to throw this out there. It's too high of a pick, but you know what? Ryan Mallett. All right? Jim Harbaugh is a former Michigan quarterback. Ryan Mallett's a former Michigan quarterback. He understands him. I know that he knows him personally. That would be something to keep an eye on. I don't think it's going to happen at number 7. It's too high, but I do like Prince Amukamara there personally.
Shane?
Yeah, I was slightly surprised by it. I'd be fine with the pick because after seeing Cameron Jordan at the Senior Bowl and rewatching the tape of him just abusing Nate Solder and all these other highly touted Pac-10 offensive linemen, I think he can make a big impact even in the 3-4 defense there in San Francisco. One name I'm going to throw out there, if they do want a pass rusher, and it's not Quinn, what about Aldon Smith out of Missouri? I think he's moving up draft boards enough that people like that potential. Someone's going to fall in love with his potential, and I really think Harbaugh's going to look the other way. I think he's going to look for a defensive pick and feel that he can either get a QB in the mid-rounds and find a steal with his scouting, or that he can develop Alex Smith or develop a free agent. So, I think either someone on that front 7, Amukamara would be great, but I think Aldon Smith is a very real possibility here as a player to go a little bit higher if the board kind of falls this way.
Yeah, and if Patrick Peterson isn't there, the Niners are going to kind of be a wild card pick. They could go in a number of different directions, and they just might surprise if their dream scenario doesn't come into fruition. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Moving on to number 8, the Tennessee Titans. This will be me making the pick.